What I'm about to read to you is very serious. Planet Earth is about to face the greatest calamity in all the history of mankind. Angelina Ballerina, who is the current Antichrist, has decided to launch the sarak. She transformed the sarak bomb that we designed to take her out because we knew we needed something powerful to take her out. So we designed a bomb that was so powerful that it could wipe out the universe like 3 times, wipe out the universe. And she's modified this bomb so that now it's got the power to wipe out the universe about 3 times over. She launched the bomb about an hour ago. I'm going to read you the letter that I got from Brent Spiner. But before, I don't want people to panic. This is a situation. I was reading from the Bible and the Lord gave me peace. I just happened to be in a section about dreams, and Zack Knight got on Skype and told me that he had a dream last night that a Jesuit master, when he was growing up, he said the dream just keeps going through his head and he can't get it out of his head. And in the dream, the Jesuit master came to Zack and right before he died and told him, I think, some story about how a king had leprosy and he wanted Jesus to heal him of his leprosy. But it was too late because Jesus had just been crucified and he'd already died on the cross. But his servant found the Shroud of Turin with Jesus' face on it, and he put it on his face, and I guess it caused Jesus' face to come up to the servant, and the servant went to the king and said, "Here is Jesus' face." And his face just glowed up, and I think his face actually became Jesus' face. And the king saw that and he believed and he was healed of his leprosy. So I just want to say, even though we are in a serious situation, we have a miracle working God. And as long as our hearts are right and we obey his commands, it's going to be all right. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't take the threat seriously. And I happen to be reading from Daniel. And so I said, Lord, I read this letter to Brent and I got very sober because what my poor, brave Brent has had to go through, nobody should have to go through this. Angelina is a master at emotional abuse and she is so evil. I think she's very possibly the most evil person in all of human history. So I was reading Daniel chapter 2 and it was about King Nebuchadnezzar having a dream. And he needed somebody to interpret the dream. And it really upset him. And I was thinking, what a coincidence. I happened to be in a passage about dreams. And Zack Knight just told me he had this dream he couldn't get out of his mind. And it was Daniel chapter 2. And Nebuchadnezzar told the astrologers and soothsayers and fortune tellers, if you can't tell me what my dream was because I can't remember it, but it's really upsetting me, I'm going to kill all of you because you're all fake and you're no good. And he was about to kill off all the astrologers and soothsayers. They said, we can't tell you what the dream was. You got to tell us what it was. He said, oh, you're all fake. If you had power to interpret dreams, you would know my dream. Daniel said, wait, let me go to God and he will tell me what your dream was. And the dream was about a statue. And it had feet of clay and iron, which is, a lot of people believe the feet of iron and clay represents Rome. And as I was reading that, Gail said, Jesus was telling me, Gail, Angelina is like, she's the leader of the Roman Catholic Church right now. She's the Jesuit leader. And she's like those feet of iron and clay. And I am the rock that's going to come and smash the feet. And the Jesuit order is going to go down. That's what he seemed to tell me. And then I was reading Daniel chapter 3 about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Jesus is saying, this is not to say that the threat is not serious. It's very serious. In fact, it's so serious that only God can rescue us. I don't even think Satan could rescue us. Maybe. But I think only God. This is a real serious threat. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to bow down to the fiery furnace to worship a false god. And they were willing to sacrifice their lives. They said, King, we will not bow down and worship this false idol. And this is how I feel. I am not Lord. I will not worship Angelina Ballerina as the Antichrist. She claims that the sarak that she's sending is going to knock down my Gail shield, and it will, unless we have a miracle from God. It will knock it down. And when it knocks it down, she will come and rape me, and I will be part of her harem. And I think she wants to use her satanic powers, I think, to like make me an extension of her, where I will be her sex slave forever. And that will happen if Jesus Christ does not intervene. But as I was reading from Daniel, the Lord seemed to say, but I will intervene, Gail, because you have been obeying my Gail commandments, and you have faith in me, and because you have a heart for me. And he says, I'm really sorry that I had to have Brent go through this, but this is all part of my plan, and I'm so glad that you're trusting me, even though you're confused and you don't understand everything. And so in Daniel chapter 4, no, it's Daniel 3, 4, and 5 is where I was at. In Daniel chapter 4, the king threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the fiery furnace. The fire was so hot that the people that threw them in there burned up. But when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in the fiery furnace, a fourth person walked in there with them, and it was Jesus, the Son of God. Jesus said, I'm going to do that for you, Gail. Angelina's about to throw you into the fiery furnace. I'm going to be in there with you, Gail. You'll be okay. Then I usually read like 3 chapters a day when I read my Bible, and then the last dream was, the last chapter that I read while I was praying about how to respond to this letter. It was Daniel chapter 4, where the king had a dream that he didn't understand, and Daniel said, King, you're too proud, and you've attained great glory and power, and it's gone to your head, and God has to humble you, and you're going to become insane, you're going to go mad. And Jesus said, Gail, that's what I'm going to do to Angelina. He said that Antichrist needs some humility, and because she launched that sarak, she's going to learn some humility. So that's what I'd like to say before I read the letter from Brent. My dearest Gail, Lori slapped the tablet out of my hand. What are you doing with that? She demanded. I just sent Gail a letter, you bitch. Lori's scowl twisted with genuine confusion. How do you even get reception in deep space? She snatched the tablet to inspect it. What service is that? Verizon? AT&T? Angelina's fairy-like voice cut sharply between us. How about your next letter to Gail explains to her exactly what's about to happen to you? A crew of Jesuits in white coats rolled in a giant metal machine. Bright pink and accented with fluffy strips of white fur and glitter, the monstrosity resembled a futuristic cross between an ultrasound, an EKG, and a Barbie playhouse decorated by Satan. I'm not exactly the master of computers like Zack Knight, but I can be a little arts and craftsy, she grinned and spun around. This little baby, no pun intended, is my rape and bake oven. Electrodes will be used to measure penis length, penis hardness, and feelings of intimacy. This will help us to determine whether your lovemaking to Lori is genuine. If the machine detects the slightest hint of disgust with beautiful blonde, blue-eyed Lori, Angelina wagged her wand as if to shame me, then angrily shot her arm out towards the digital launch pad on the sarak. The sarak launches for Melbourne, Florida. That's where I live, folks. I felt myself becoming sick. There's one other rule, Angelina warned. We anticipated you might simply try to cheat, Brent. If you think you can make love to Laurie by thinking of Gail, think again. Our rape analysts have been studying you for over 22 years, and we know your erection is 18.25 inches with Laurie and 18.5 inches with Gail. If your penis becomes 18.5 inches, we'll know you're thinking of Gail. If it falls below 17.25 inches, we'll know you're not excited enough for Laurie. In other words, your penis length had better stay in the Goldilocks zone, or dearest Gail is as good as raped. Angelina's voice sweetened. She drew her fingers delicately along the machine as she circled it, then tapped her fingertips on its display screen. Once your love for Laurie is properly consummated, we all get to watch the conception live on screen before our eyes. It's magic. She rolled her eyes back with pleasure. You'll love it. I was so nauseated I could barely breathe. I had already failed to protect Gail, failed to protect our men, and now here I was at the mercy of a sociopathic ballerina who wanted nothing more than to see the last remaining vestiges of my masculinity gutted from my testicles and poured into the perfect blonde vagina of one of her lovesick whores. Where do you people keep your puke buckets? I retorted insolently, forcing courage through my shriveling morale. Angelina laughed wickedly. Now, Daddy Brent, is that any way to talk on the night of your beautiful child's conception? She snapped her fingers, signaling for her Jesuit assistants. Stick him! I protested, breathing heavily in terror, begging them, no, no! But resistance was futile. The Jesuit workers prepared the electrodes shaped like fuzzy pink teddy bear heads, and began attaching them to my body. One was force-fisted down my throat, making me gag. Two were clamped to each of my nipples. Another was inserted into the head of my penis. Another my rectum. Before long, I was hooked up to Angelina's machine, feeling like Keanu Reeves in a pink nightmare version of The Matrix. Angelina giggled with delight. I hope you remember the rules. Her fingertips pinched a tiny metal lever switch on the machine, roughly the size of TJ's erect penis. That's from the Drunken Peasants. Flipping it into the on position. A digital clock started on the display screen. You have 15 minutes. Now make me a baby, Angelina screeched. Beginning to quietly sob, I weakly rolled Laurie onto her back. She threw her arms around me and kissed me passionately on the lips, making me squirm like a worm in hell. 14 minutes, 57 seconds. My body felt like it would collapse, and I wished I could die. All I wanted was Gail, but clearly I was unworthy of anything but the hellish fate I had brought upon myself. Perhaps I deserved to give every last drop of my semen to these penis-hungry Jesuit vixens. I didn't deserve to have the semen of Jesus in heaven to ejaculate its gallons into my beautiful bride Gail. I was a monster who deserved only the tight, youthful, clean-shaven vaginas of devils. 14 minutes, 23 seconds. Swallowing snot and tears. I sweat profusely as I looked over at the display screen on the machine, focusing on keeping my erection stable as the length readings flickered ever so slightly up and down. I thought back to when I made the Dreamland album for Gail, how my heart swelled with passion and infused joy into every musical note uttered from my velvet voice. I knew, and had never stopped knowing, that I would sacrifice everything for her. 14 minutes, 11 seconds. A warning alarm on the machine began to sound, filling the room with its high-pitched whines. My emotional readings were loud and clear, with a mixture of utter disgust for Laurie and true love for Gail. I was now unwittingly forcing the machine to begin launching the sarak. This was all my fault. This was all my fault. My heart felt like it wanted to crawl right out of my body. I could have died right then and there, but I knew to do so would be like throwing Gail to the pink, fuzzy wolves. Gail was facing her worst possible nightmare, and the only way to stop it was for me to go through mine. I knew that no matter how catastrophic my torment, Gail's suffering would be far more. I could not fail her again. 13 minutes, 59 seconds. What would Jesus do? I whispered to myself. He would shoulder the sin for his bride. He would sacrifice his body to this monster, knowing his soul was eternal, and that to suffer himself into death was to save the whole world he loved from eternal suffering. 12 minutes, 3 seconds. I swallowed and began to delve deep into my method acting skills. Like a thespian supercomputer, I began to brainstorm every possible way that Laurie could possibly be perceived as lovable. 11 minutes, 10 seconds. She's physically beautiful, I thought. She's persistent in her goals, emotionally passionate, loyal to her cause. Hell, she was one of the Jesuit order's best and most successful agents of all time. She is an accomplished, beautiful, driven lady. 10 minutes, 9 seconds. The warning alarms on the machine died down. Gail was becoming safer by the moment. 9 minutes, 7 seconds. Sweat poured down my face as I thrust into Laurie like a love soldier. My face hardened into a mask of steel passion. I had one job, and damn it, if I wasn't going to commit. Laurie gasped as I grabbed her buttocks, surprised by my passion, as she looked into my eyes. 8 minutes, 23 seconds. The digital countdown on the machine coldly descended. My penile parameters fluxed, but soon my emotional reeds flew from disgust into heaven-soaring love. My semen sloshed around in my testicles like overfilled washing machines, eager to fill my lover. 5 minutes, 3 seconds. Brent, Laurie spoke softly, utterly shocked, her words broken by warm moans. I could have never imagined you making love to me like this before. 2 minutes, 14 seconds. Laurie McBride, I want you to have my baby. 30 seconds. Angelina gripped a bag of popcorn, shoveling down handfuls in wide-eyed excitement. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. With a masculine roar, I grabbed Laurie by both breasts, slammed her down like a red-blooded lion, and emptied my entire sperm supply in one load. The digital clock dropped to 0 and was signaled by the ding sound of an oven-baked timer. I rolled off of a blissful, sweating Laurie McBride, her mouth agape as she stared at the ceiling in amorous disbelief. I vomited. Yay! Angelina clapped her delicate hands together rapidly. Brent just made love to me, Laurie exclaimed. He's never made love to Gail. Are finally you happy, my darling minion? Your life's mission is practically complete, Angelina cooed. Just look at these emotional reads. Brent has never even made brain-to-brain love to Gail with that kind of intensity. I was disoriented and dizzy, like I had just exited a spinning amusement park ride. Now that I knew for certain that Gail was safe, that my duty to protect her was fulfilled, I wanted out of this pink carnival of horrors. If that meant throwing myself out of the nearest airlock to be suffocated to my death, I welcomed it. I couldn't bring myself to fathom what I had just done. I felt like Jesus who sacrificed his body on the cross to save humanity. Only the one I would die for was Gail. Now here I was broken, bloody, and naked on the ground for all the world to see. Jesus died naked on the cross, by the way. The two women continued to speak, their words striking my quivering body like stones. You mean? Laurie could hardly speak. She was so enraptured. For 10 minutes, he loved me more than he has ever loved Gail? Pretty much. And just look what your love is doing now. Angelina pointed to the machine. On screen was a map of Laurie's reproductive system. Millions of tiny sperm blasted through her cervix like racehorses, swimming their way through her uterus in a mad dash. I noticed that each of my sperm were individually tagged and appeared to have names attached. You named my sperm? I choked out incredulously. Place your bets now, ladies and gents, Angelina announced. What in the... I began. An explosion of Jesuits flooded into the room like a Walmart on Black Friday, loudly emptying their pockets of cash and coins. They began to yell over each other excitedly. My money is on Seaman Biscuit, a Jesuit shouted. Seaman Biscuit, another Jesuit huffed. He'll never make it to a fallopian tube. My money is on Daddy's little squirt. Forget those kumquats. I've got my eye on Overcomer, a third Jesuit declared. Nemo, go, Nemo, yet another Jesuit interrupted. Nemo? The one with the kinked tail? That's going to make a retard baby. Don't listen to them, Nemo. Just keep swimming. The crowd roared, cheering on my sperm as I sat curled up on the floor like a beaten dog. Standing over the machine, a fast-talking Jesuit commentated on the race at lightning speed, updating the excited Jesuits from moment to moment as my sperm battled each other for the finish line inside Laurie. Big Dipper taking the lead, followed by Daddy's little squirt. Seaman Biscuit falling behind, the commentator spat on. Oh no! Little Dipper steals the lead, and now here comes Steady Swimmer. Daddy's little squirt coming back for the lead. Seaman Biscuit falling further behind. The crowd threw up their fists, hooting and hollering and dry humping each other. There's the egg, the commentator announced. Daddy's little squirt coming up on the egg, followed by Seaman Biscuit. Seaman Biscuit swimming for the lead. They are neck and neck. Jesuits cheered, punching other Jesuits in the face as their chosen sperm began to win. There they go, ladies and gentlemen, the commentator continued with breathless excitement. Daddy's little squirt and Seaman Biscuit now grinding against the egg. Who will it be? And it's Seaman Biscuit! Seaman Biscuit takes the egg. What a show, ladies and gentlemen! The Jesuit crowd noted, chanting and roughhousing violently with each other. Many of the losing Jesuits began to get victory raped, which was clearly just as exciting for losers as it was for the winners. I looked away, cringing with disgust. Angelina raised her petite hands with a crowd-appeasing smile. Congratulations to all winners, she called. Jesuits finished their rapes and grabbed their cash, charging nakedly from the room to immediately spend their newly acquired money on whatever first impulses that came to their minds. Still others remained to continue raping each other in the corners of the room. Angelina's voice darkened. And now for the grand finale! She grabbed a dial on the machine. As she turned the dial to the right, Laurie's stomach began to grow. Right about, Angelina adjusted the dial. Laurie's stomach grew and shrank as Angelina fiddled for the proper setting until finally, there! The oven timer dinged, and Angelina stopped the dial. She then smashed her tiny index finger on a button that said, Deliver. I'm ready, Dr. Spiner, Laurie called, a huge, creepy grin spread across her face. She opened her legs to me tauntingly, wrapping her fingers in succession along her belly. My whole body was like a wet noodle, barely able to keep myself upright. I weakly crawled on my knees to Laurie to deliver my baby. For a Jesuit, the childbirth process is overwhelmingly efficient, almost mechanical. With little fanfare, the baby dropped out of Laurie's vagina like a soda being dispensed out of a vending machine. It's a girl, I announced tiredly, dead inside. Yay! We can name her Gail after your ex, Laurie threw her arms around me. My ex? I growled with frustration. Look, Angelina, I did everything you wanted. I clutched the baby, bouncing her indignantly on my shoulder. Now let us all go and leave Gail alone. Angelina laughed and squealed. Oh, Brent, haven't you and Gail learned anything? Never trust a Jesuit. With that, she punctuated herself by slamming on the launch button for the sarak. No! I yelled. It was too late. The sarak had been launched. All of my efforts, all of my sacrifices had been for nothing. I felt like I was the only human on earth who could understand the pain that Jesus feels. To know that he died for his children on the cross, only for those children to be lost to the devil. It's a pain worse than death itself, worse than any crucifixion, any humiliation, any form of torture. Clutching mine and Laurie's daughter, I curled up on the floor into the fetal position, and we both began to bawl like babies. Suddenly, a woman in a military uniform appeared in the doorway, her piercing eyes bearing into me with such intensity that I was compelled to stifle my tears and look toward her. It was Rule 13. Rule 13 put her finger to her lips to quiet me, then squatted down like an umpire and held out her hands. All hope wasn't lost. I had to pull myself together. There was still time to save Gail, and I wasn't alone. There were angels among us. Swelling with renewed courage, I picked up the baby and flung her toward Rule 13 like a football. This quickly drew the attention of the other two women, who turned away from me to see Rule 13 with my baby. Lori shrieked, "Hey, that's not yours!" Angelina saw Rule 13 and screamed, "How did you escape?" Now clutched in Rule 13's arms, the baby perked up at the sight of her tiny, perfect breasts, cooing with instant delight. Rule 13 suctioned the baby securely to one of her nipples, then stiffened proudly at attention and shot me a Nazi salute. I nodded, smiled, and sent her a Nazi salute in return. With the baby firmly locked to her breast, Rule 13 spun around and pumped her arms as she sprinted down the hallway, faster than I had seen anyone run before. Lori and Angelina immediately jumped and shot off after her, their voices screaming over each other at Rule 13. As soon as they were gone, I scrambled for my tablet to begin writing an emergency email to Gail. My dear wife, you must contact Zack Knight as soon as possible. He is our only hope for stopping the sarak, which is now headed straight for Earth. Any followers in the Southeastern United States are advised to evacuate immediately or risk becoming Angelina ballerina sex slaves. Those that risk staying behind should follow the Gail Commandments if they haven't already. Prayers are needed right now. Followers are also encouraged to stay updated on further developments by tuning into Channel 00 on cable. That's the Gabriel Chana Fox News channel. You may see a bright pink star in the sky once the sarak is close enough to Earth's orbit. Let us all pray and keep the Gail shield strong. That's the shield that is an extension of my body, and it's covering the earth around over me to protect me. Stay safe, everyone. My darling Gail, please forgive me. You and Zack Knight are our last remaining heroes. I put my faith in Jesus that you will be safe. Your adoring husband who would die on the cross for you, Brent Spiner. I would like to say that Jesus told me at one time that Brent loves me as much as Jesus does. And I believe it after what I just read to you. Brent did the best he could. I don't understand why Jesus allowed this, but it will make sense when this is all over. Brent Spiner is not kidding. If you live in the Southeast United States, you need to follow the Gail Commandments. For some reason, by obeying the Gail Commandments, it makes my Gail shield stronger. Like I said, the sarak has the ability to annihilate the universe 3 times over. It's a very serious threat. But God did give me a promise, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I happened to read passages about dreams and that Zack Knight had a dream. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Don't panic, but then don't take this like a joke either. Make sure you obey the Gail Commandments. Remember when the children of Israel left Egypt and God put the death angel over the Egyptians and said you need to put a cross on your doorway or the firstborn in your abode will die? Well, those who didn't take him seriously, the firstborn did die. So we need to take this seriously. The cross on the door for us is to obey the Gail Commandments and to pray and ask Jesus to make the Gail shield strong. Zack Knight, in the meanwhile, is going to see if he can contact some scientists and do everything he can to make sure that the Gail shield will be at maximum strength. I will have a link for the Gail Commandments underneath this video. People, this is not a joke. Don't panic. Have faith in Jesus, but take it seriously.